everybody. Welcome to 20Q, 20 questions with interesting people, where we learn the origin stories of everyday superheroes in the LGBT community and friends. I am your host, the very handsome Tim Kirk, and our guest this time is Hugo Greenhalgh, author of The Diaries of Mr. Lucas, an incredibly fascinating account of the life of the man who was, by most accounts, an ordinary man, nothing, no celebrity, nothing special, just an ordinary man who lived through the tumultuous hardships of being a gay man through the late 40s until his death in 2014. He was convicted of cottaging, of offenses in cottaging, which is a British term for public sex in men's restrooms. He did spend some time, a considerable amount of time in Dublin, where my mom was from. And I'm going to start off the interview with my first 10 questions, which I do ask every person. Hugo, a bit about your background. Where are you originally from, and what was it like?
Well, thank you so much for getting me onto the podcast. I really do appreciate this. And thank you, hopefully, to your readers who will rush out and buy The Diaries of Mr. Lucas, available now from Atlantic Books. And that won't be the only plug I'll be doing, I'm afraid. But if you check on Amazon.com, you'll be able to find it. But yes, my name is Hugo Greenhalgh. I'm a journalist by trade. Formerly, I was at the Financial Times for 11 years. I've just left Reuters, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, where I was there for 6 years and launched their LGBTQ plus news website called Openly. But originally, I'm from Devon in the southwest of England. Capital city of Devon is Exeter, where I was born and brought up. So Devon is the ideal place to grow up in. It's beautiful, bucolic. You've got Dartmoor, it's incredible moorlands. You've got the sea down by Exmouth. So it's a beautiful place to grow up in and a fantastic place to escape from, basically. It's gorgeous, lovely, but very dull. So you get out very quickly. So that's me in a nutshell. Again, very working class kid, brought up in what we call a council estate, state public housing, went to a comprehensive, again, state school, disappeared to Edinburgh University to study English and Russian, and finally became the dream job, having read Tintin, which I'm sure you have in the States as well, the story of the cub reporter with his dog Snowy and Captain Haddock, became a reporter, became a journalist, and that's what I'm now doing, and now become a writer.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. Great background, great story. I have been to Britain and I have been to the UK and all over. And
oh, fantastic! Which bits have you been down to Devon?
No, I haven't been. I think I've been to Southend-on-Sea, and I've been as far north as Leicester.
You need to get out more in that case. I mean, the question to ask for any person heading to Devon or Cornwall is with scones. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in America, but do you put the clotted cream on first or the jam on first?
Most people do not use clotted cream unless they're at the formal tea.
Oh my God, that's even more horrendous.
Butter. Yes, they put butter, maybe jams. Yes, Americans are just so barbaric.
Philistines, absolute Philistines.
Absolutely. So my second question is, considering where you come from, our mutual disdain for people who don't use clotted cream.
I did start this. It's entirely my fault. Sorry.
Which life experience had the greatest impact on you?
Well, it's a bit of a toss-up, actually. I mean, when I was 19, I took the British government to the European Court of Human Rights here in the UK over the gay male age of consent. At that point, it was 21 for gay men to 16 to heterosexual men, so completely bonkers and absolutely immoral, unjustifiable.
You did that?
I did that, exactly. Myself,
really? Wow.
My then boyfriend, Will Parry, and a third person called Ralph Wild. The three of us took the British government to the European Court of Human Rights. And it was a year and a half, 18-month-long campaign of giving speeches to universities, town halls, local radio, local telly. We spent the entire 18 months. I was supposed to be a student at that point up at Edinburgh, but I missed out my third year of a 4-year course entirely to spend the time bombing up and down the country to change hearts and minds and ultimately changed the law. We got close. In 1990, let me get my dates right, 1993, was it 4? Anyway, there was a free vote in the House of Commons due to our court case, because it became a very, very hot political issue at the time. The campaign backed by Stonewall, which is this incredible human rights organization here in UK and also across Europe. Free vote in the House of Commons means you vote with your conscience rather than along party lines. And it rather typical British fudge, it went down from 21 to 18 rather than equality at 16. Which annoyingly nullified our case at the European Court of Human Rights, because I'd started when I was 19, so therefore 18, no need for you. So two younger, much, much braver young men, Ewan Sutherland and Chris Morris, picked up the baton and again reapplied to the European Court of Human Rights and brought it down to 16 a few years later. So that was me as a young campaigner, aged 19. Incredible experience. Rather terrifying. We got death threats. My mum, even poor mum, got a bloody death threat. It's appalling. I mean, I remember telling me about, through the letterbox, because we didn't have Gmail or the internet back in those days. But yeah, stuff, shoved through the letterbox saying, if you hadn't been born, then Hugo wouldn't have been born, and we'll do something about that. And she said, darling, I just ripped up the note, flushed it down the loo, and went to bed with the cutlery drawer. Love her.
Wow,
how to brush off that type of nonsense. So that was an incredible experience. But fast forward by quite a few years to 2001, I was working at the FT in their trade magazines department. And I was getting a bit bored. I mean, I was a financial journalist, and I'd never wanted to be a financial journalist. I mean, who grows up wanting to write about finance? It's fascinating, it's brilliant, but I wanted to see the world and become a foreign correspondent. So I saw a job advert in the paper, and so long story, I'll tell very quickly. Looking for a TV presenter in Batumi, Georgia. So the former Soviet state of Georgia. Really? So I wrote them saying I'd like to write about this. I said, okay, it's not just presenting the news in English. I speak really bad Russian, post-university, whatever, but also traveling with the president of this secessionist region called Jara, writing his speeches, being his PR. So I thought, sod that, that's a book, and that one's coming, and went and had the most incredible 3.5 years, bombing around the world, private jets, and towards the end, a lot of tanks, a lot of guns. My boy got overthrown in a revolution, and I unfortunately got kicked out of the country at gunpoint. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster over the past few years.
Wow, you have been around the world in very many senses.
Yes, and I have to say, I mean, in terms of my boy got my governor getting overthrown. He was. How to put this? I mean, not a dictator in the kind of horrible sense, but, the electricity went on, kept on going, that the water was on, pensions were paid, but there was no democracy, basically. People made that kind of moral compromise at the point, but he had to go, and thank God he did, quite frankly. The people finally rose and kicked him out. And Georgia, oh, poor Georgia. I mean, as you're probably watching the news nowadays, it's still an absolute mess when it comes to the news in terms of everything going on at the moment. But so I can't quite pin down those moments in my life. There's been a few things like that. It's been interesting, shall we say.
It's interesting. I went to culinary school with a girl who was one of the leaders of something called Proposition 2 in Colorado. And she was supported by Barbara Streisand of amongst a few celebrities.
Okay, yeah.
And the woman she was partners with in this and repealing this legislation, she wound up taking her own life because she had so many death threats and so many stresses.
Awful! Jesus Christ!
Yeah, and this is in the 90s, and
God, I'm so sorry.
We were one of two people in our class, and we were pretty much on the outs with all these other people, and there was a load of the stereotypical closeted guys from Brooklyn and Staten Island who were in our class, who were bullying, and they did their best to, if we had to go through a door, they made sure it was locked. If it had to do something, it was, we missed lectures because we had to go around the long way and interrupt another class. And it was that type of thing. So I understand that.
Yeah, but I'm so sorry to hear about your friend. I mean, good Lord. I mean,
she did. I wasn't someone that I knew. It was her friend, and she went through a tremendous ordeal with that. But she actually was successful. and it worked out to help further the gay rights in America.
Good.
I worked for NBC Universal for a number of years, and I was the event lead for out at NBC Universal, which was the largest ERG. So I did all the Pride in New York City Pride parades and everything.
Fantastic!
Like that for a number of years, and 2013 and 2015 was New York State and federal recognition of marriage equality. So those are banner years, and it was millions upon millions of spectators.
No, congratulations!
So I had those days, and I've had, I've been involved, and I do know a lot of people involved in activism. So
but it's appalling but it's appalling to hear, because I mean, it does take the toll. Basically, I mean, certainly, I mean, I was a very narky 19-year-old, a very bolshy 19-year-old, and nothing was going to stop me. Nothing was going to silence me. But again, the amount of, if I can say the word crap, the amount of crap we got from the media, from the public, from everything. These are quite dark days in British history when it comes to being gay, being queer, being out. I mean, it's moved. The dial has moved enormously in the past 30 years. But it can have an appalling effect on people. So yes, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend.
Well, also I'm going to be sending you this link about gay New York in 1970s and 80s.
Oh, please do, definitely.
The stories of the people that they're riveting, and they bring you to tears.
Yeah,
you just believe what people had to suffer through, and it's something. I was younger, and I was so much more happy-go-lucky, and I was so much ignorance, and ignorance is bliss. And men who were in their 20s into their 30s, who were very active, all suffered and died mysteriously and very quickly.
Yeah,
and it was stinging, and you could see the. As you read the stories, you just literally can't believe the inhumanity.
No, I remember. I'm going to name him, which I think I'm allowed ethically to do. But a sort of, not necessarily a boyfriend, but certainly somebody I met in New York in the early 90s. A guy called James Edwin Appleby III. I kind of Googled him when Google, started going. About kind of 10 or so years later, and he, poor thing, was, sorry, it's going to get quite dark here, was found murdered in a bathtub in Puerto Rico in a homophobic killing. So those were just horrific days, quite frankly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit lighter because of you. I'm also very fascinated by the British, the subset of so much knowledge, awareness, and learning of Russian. For British people, I find it a little bit fascinating.
It's interesting. It's still quite rare. I mean, when I joined the FT, the newspaper, Financial Times, everybody spoke Russian. I thought, hooray, look at me, I'm different. I've got something. It's like, no, I speak Russian. I speak. But that's quite rare and quite rarefied, I think. I'm not sure knowledge of Russian is, I mean, certainly when I was doing my course at school, sixth form college, which is between the ages of 17 and 18, the sixth form college, which is separate to your school, it's a separate institution. They could only afford, I think, kind of like 3-4 hours a week. I was doing a 1-year GCSE, which you do up until the age of 16, and then a 1-year A-level. So, you're supposed to spend 2 years on each. So I was doing it like mega concentratedly. So we thought, okay, we're not gonna end up speaking Russian. We're not going to pass. So a friend and I went to Moscow. We went to the Soviet Union. God, there's another experience which was just utterly amazing. In, I think, 89, 90, when it was still the Soviet Union. And we decided rather than flying there, we'd take the train, let's have the full experience. And you get on the train at Le Havre, you trundle through, I don't know, Belgium, Holland, whatever, Germany, Poland, etc., etc. Not realizing there's no restaurant car until you hit Russia. So we were starving when we arrived. But they freed up the Polish visa system whilst we were there because everything was just falling apart at that time. I remember going back and forwards to the theatre with my host, my Russian language host, who was this beautiful, wonderful woman, Olya, who was a chain-smoking, vodka-drinking theatre producer who used me to get free tickets to the theatre. So it's like, Hugo, just speak some English. Hello, my name's Hugo. Yeah, here's some free tickets. But you'd go past kind of demonstrations and there'd be kind of Yeltsin on top of a caravan shouting, Demokratia, Demokratia. Incredible times, basically.
It's fascinating. And you wound up working for Reuters, and I knew someone who worked for Reuters, and one of my former co-workers at NBC, actually, he went to work for Reuters in Manhattan. So I doubt you never have any connection with it. But the third question is, what would you say to anyone interested in an aspect of your experience? Meaning, if someone wanted to explore an idea or prospective opportunity based on what you could tell them, what would be the main thing to encourage or discourage them?
Well, okay, let's start with a couple of things. If you want to become a journalist, please do. It's the most incredible job that gives you the most incredible, just to overuse the word incredible, experiences. You know, whether it be reporting live from Red Square, which I've done, whether it be, being outside the House of Commons during the age consent vote, being up in the press gallery, et cetera, et cetera. It will send you around the world, but it won't make you any money. Just to say this very clearly now. It's a passion job and a job I still love hugely, but I'm broke. Happily broke, I have to say. But, I'm still renting a flat an apartment age 51 rather than owning But I don't care, quite frankly. So become a journalist. It is absolutely incredibly, stop using that word incredibly, it's an amazing job experience. It's an incredible lifestyle, basically. And secondly, one thing I've been talking to in terms of telling students who are studying journalism or students at my old sixth-form college, again, those 17, 18-year-olds, you have to take massive risks. Whatever you do to start off, not just as a journalist, but perhaps in other ways as well, to get yourself noticed nowadays, you do something nuts. As I did, moved to Georgia to work for this kind of crazy character. Okay, you can't quite take the British government to the human rights every day, but you need to take massive risks and understand that. And at the moment, at age 51, with one book out, I'm working on the second, and I've just been just moved on from Reuters at the moment, so I'm looking around for other opportunities. But I'm thinking about moving to Ukraine and looking at the possibility there of what can I do to help, basically. I mean, again, I love Russia. Madly love Russia. But Putin is an absolute nutcase, and it has to go. And I honestly don't think that the Russians are wholly behind him. But I was in Ukraine last year for I don't want to call it the first anniversary because that sounds like something to celebrate, but the first year since Russia invaded Ukraine, and meeting such incredible LGBTQ plus Ukrainians, other people, hearing their stories. This incredible trans woman, Anastasia, who has turned her flat into a drop-in center for trans people looking for sex hormones, looking for transition medication, which the state can't afford. All the supply chains have dropped. She's just amazing, incredible. These people kind of running HIV/AIDS centers still within Kyiv when the bombs are dropping. There's centers still open. These people are inspiring, brave, and brilliant. And if I can do something small anyway to help, then I'd love to.
I'm keeping an eye on everything every day, and I know that Putin has his own Rasputin.
Yes.
And he's got this grand delusion of conquering all of Europe, and along with the UAE and Saudi Arabia taking over South America, just undermining everything along with Xi, and Trump is he's from New York, and 94% of people in New York voted against him in 2016. We all know who he is. We know he's he's a degenerate, and we can't stand him. So, I think we're all on the same page in that aspect.
100%.
The thing is, from what I read from the people who are retired American foreign service people who were in the military and who were attorneys and foreign policy, they do post photos, and they post recollections of saying the state of Russia is, outside of the malls and the touristy traps, it is absolutely like backwards America in the 19th century.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. I mean, it's again, as much as I love. I mean, again, I've been in when I was living in Georgia for 3.5 years. I went to Moscow like a zillion times, and I'm huge. I am the fourth sister trying desperately to move to Moscow at some point, but the majority of Russians are homophobic, they are anti-Semitic, they are racist. I mean, it's not a good place, basically. But Putin is absolutely at the acme of everything. He's got to go, and I think, and again, if there's anything small bits I can do, to nudge that. But Ukraine is, and Ukrainians are just incredible people, so brave. Yeah,
right. So such fortitude. It's incredible. So, what is based on your incredible past and this amazing book? What is your most noteworthy achievement?
So you can see I'm doing a Boris Johnson stumble, whatever, making noises rather than make an answer. It's probably the age of consent campaign, because, I mean, again, hopefully, I mean, we didn't quite change the law entirely. We got the age of consent down from 21 to 18, not equality at 16. But I think we were part of a broader movement at the time that really did change, again, cliche, hearts and minds. Tony Blair, when he became Prime Minister in the UK in 1997, was an absolute kind of arbiter of that. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the Iraq War and everything went to afterwards, but Britain changed enormously in the late 90s. And I certainly think that the Age of Consent campaign and the other campaigns for sexual equality that were going on at the same time in the UK, gays in the military, the fight to allow gay, lesbian, bi, trans people to fight in the military that was going alongside us. There were various employment rights, again, for gay people, and I should say queer people more generally as well. Society was changing enormously. We became a much better, more open, more inclusive society in the late 90s. And I think, excuse me, my small part in that, I think, yes, that's probably what I'm most proud of, basically, to be part of a wider cultural shift.
Well, that is fantastic. I think I tie a lot of it, and a lot of people don't want to give him credit for it, but a lot of it had to do in America with a number of legal precedents that happened. But when Clinton allowed or openly had members of his administration who were gay showing up with their partners and their children on the White House lawn,
absolutely, yeah,
and that signaled a huge shift. And there's so many people who are younger than me who, there's a fellow by the name of Bob Diamond who goes around doing documentary videos, and he asks young people on the piers in Christopher Street, the legendary piers, which
I know about the piers, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
and it's now they've got AstroTurf and everything is planted and it's all.
And we can talk again about Clinton's legacy. Don't ask, don't tell. Not so good, but yes, in terms of visibility of gay, of queer people at that point, was incredibly important. Exactly.
This is the same time as Philadelphia had come out, and I remember being working in an office. And people did not know that I was gay. One or two people did not know that I was gay.
Yeah.
And then I would get on an elevator with them, and they would make these faces, these grimaces, and they would shuffle over to the far side of the elevator for fear that they were going to contract AIDS from me.
Good Lord.
Or just I was going to give them I was going to infect them with something. So and then it became a much more easy to be out, but even though I was the gay at work.
I think you're right. I think life, society, culture did change. Tim, I'm going to ask a very rude question. I'm going to switch the tables. Being a journalist, I have to do this. Okay. Forgive me. How old are you? Sorry.
I'm 64.
Okay, I'm 51, so we're 13 years apart, but I think we went through the same years, if nothing else. That we saw visibly, actually, culture, society again, becoming more inclusive, and us, you and I, becoming more visible. Lesbians, bi, trans people, nowadays non-binary people, queer people. It's part of that, basically, part of that process. But I think it started mid-90s or so, and then it's getting worse now, particularly for trans people. But it has been an upward trajectory since, apart from the last couple of years when it's been absolutely, gone to pot.
I actually will say one of my proudest moments was I worked as the manager of the classical music department for the HMV store at 86 and Lexington Avenue, which is on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Oh, fantastic.
And the very first thing I had to do was hire people, and the very first person I hired was a recently post-op trans woman.
Good,
so
exactly.
I take credit for that.
Absolutely.
I did something decent.
Well, also, I mean, again, you look at one thing I did in the book. Mr. Lucas lived between 1926 and, as you say, died in 2014. So he was active, as it were, out on the scene in the 50s, 60s, 70s, are the key years for him. And you look at the experience of gay men, fundamentally, because that's the lens through which he's writing as a gay man himself. So not so much about lesbians or bi people or trans people, but that's basically his milieu, should we say. And you look at their experience in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and it's exactly, if not the same as trans people nowadays. Do we not get this? We've been here before, I
have a friend of mine actually I interviewed on the podcast.
Yeah.
I helped get an internship at CNBC, and she was mid transition. And there's a well known, and he's a bit of a crackpot as far as I'm concerned, financial analyst or forecaster. And in the men's room, she was making herself up and getting her ready, and this guy went in and had this wild overreaction to her preparing herself. But she was in mid transition, so it still goes on. This was as recently as 5 or 6 years ago.
We simply, I mean, as a community, we have to remember our brothers, sisters, our non-binary friends. We have to remember that we are still together, that we still care about each other, and at times we have to show that we still care and do something about it.
So again, with this guy Bob Diamond going around on the piers, asking people, talking to people, and it's trying to like chisel it through their heads. You don't seem to understand. You're standing on the shoulders of people who threw themselves on a bomb for you.
Exactly right.
And he's going up to some person, some well-dressed, well-to-do, young, disaffected kid, and he's sitting there and he's talking to asking him about Stonewall. And the kid said, yeah, I heard about that story. And this guy's blood boiled instantly. He says, "It's not a story.
It's not a story."
That type of thing.
And the shoulders, you're right, the shoulders of trans women of color, basically. In terms of being at the barricades, we were there, they were there, we were there together, and we must not ever forget that, basically.
I'm sorry to say that too many people who I know who are gay are just. And I have very many friends of gay, who are lesbian, who are trans, who bi, everything. And so many gay men in New York are racist. They are misogynistic, and I don't know what is the problem. What you've been marginalized, you've been pushed to the side, you've been hated, and these are people who are fine. They're great. They're good friends.
It's the ladder syndrome. We've got there, and we're pulling up the ladder after us. Basically, we're all right, mate. We're okay, Jack. Whatever the phrase is, and not quite screw you, but. We can't be bothered anymore. We've become, the key word here is complacent. The complacency about, we've achieved everything. I mean, as you and I, white gay men, gay marriage, age consent, adoption, tick, 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 tick. But it's not just about us. Again, we're a community. We aren't just individual, L and the G and the B, whatever. We are a community. We are supposed to be together, quite frankly. So we haven't got there at all.
And I've been actually gay bashed twice, and I know people who are your age. And in America, they were able to get gay and lesbian straight education networks. They were getting to have PFLAG. Yeah. I had absolutely nothing.
No.
Except you fag, you queer. If I held hands with somebody walking down the street, someone would scream AIDS at us. That type of thing. So this was something that was not. Anything that was easy for any of us, and then to be out and to be proud, it was an act of defiance.
But to a certain extent, it's kind of our generation's fault, as it were, in terms of, again, fighting the age of consent campaign back in the 90s, again, generally being a journalist in the 2020s, again, gay, queer, absolutely kind of fighting for equality. But again, behind that was the fact that we were doing it so that the next generation, the younger generation, didn't have to do it themselves. Yeah, and that's great. And we've allowed them to grow up without having to worry about that. And now we're criticizing them for not worrying about it. So there's a flip side here.
They're not understanding.
They shouldn't be grateful. Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. So, again.
We feel they owe us.
I think give them leeway because, again, we fought for them not to have to care about this, not to have to worry about it. And the fact they're not worried about it now pisses us off, which it shouldn't do.
You know what we did? It's just like the cranky old grandpa.
I'm afraid cranky is the word. I won't say grandfather at this point, but cranky.
I actually, at one point years ago, I was a co-owner of a fitness equipment business on Long Island.
Gosh, how many jobs have you had?
Oh, I am a factotum.
I'm getting there. Yeah, exactly.
But my business was on a strip mall that I replaced and raised the land of a well-known former gay bar.
Okay.
So all the people would come in And then they would tell me their stories
Yeah.
from my business about the previous business. So I've been learning and learning.
That
and
you
learning,
demolished and ripped down and ruined. Yeah, that bit.
Yeah. It was a
You
big old house on a
evil
spit of
landlord,
land.
you.
I didn't do it. I didn't even know until after the fact.
Milord.
And the funny thing about it is my phone was bizarre, and it just kept on. It would cut out on me, or it would ring and then hang up. And I told somebody who I knew, who had been a patron of that previous place.
Yeah.
And he told me, oh, that's just Grandma. I said, what do you mean? He goes, that's the ghost of Grandma. So, what do you mean? So there was an old man beside of the corner of the bar who was well known. He was a fixture in the bar. And
God,
they were convinced there was his ghost.
That's me. I'm sorry. I want to be that, basically. I was thinking about moving to New Orleans a couple of years ago, and I just thought, to be in my kind of, my 50s, sitting on my own in the corner of the bar with a beer and probably a cigarette, because I'm a bad, evil smoker. Lovely. And writing books. Sorry, that bit.
Julius is in the Village is the place to be to take.
That's right. Yes, exactly. I'm with you.
That's the place.
It's still going as well.
It's still going. It's actually became a national landmark, so it can't be taken down.
That makes sense.
It's revered, and it still has the jukebox is actually a gay history.
Because it is, I think, the oldest gay bar, queer bar in the States.
Yes,
I don't know.
Just about.
Yeah.
And the owners have kept it pretty much. It still has the great French fries and the burgers.
Yeah.
What they did do, though, which was kind of crestfallen for many people, is I don't know if you remember, the restroom, the men's restroom was covered with album covers of Broadway shows.
I don't remember that. Okay, yeah. It's been a while since I've been there, but anyway, yeah.
It was all torn out and it was painted black, and everybody was just destroyed.
No,
you've
ruined so many Queen's life. How dare you?
Yes, but if you go to listen to the jukebox is gay history.
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
It goes all the way back. It goes Judy, Liza, Cher, everything straight up.
I have to say, I'm sorry, but I am completely anti-gay when it comes to this stuff. I hate show tunes. I hate musicals. I'm so sorry. I'm the world's worst gay.
I'm a Liza Minnelli fan. I love Liza Minnelli. She can do me no wrong.
No.
So I'm one of those people. I'm one of those.
I'm a dreadful, sneery British person. I'm sorry, but no.
I've gotten to meet a few of them too, and I just
hang on. Okay, I'll take this. Have you met Liza?
Yes.
Well, okay, that's bloody impressive. I'll take that. Yes. Okay.
And Bette.
And ignoring who cares about Bette Miller? What was Liza like?
She was very low key, down to earth. I was working with somebody who was a set designer, and he was working in the easy listening section, and he was in between gigs, so he was working there. And of course, and this guy was a very bright guy.
Yeah.
He actually went to Rio, and he ignored his advice, and he went to I think Ipanema, and he got second-degree burns, wound up in the hospital, and he picked up Portuguese while he was in the hospital speaking to the nurses.
It's a bit of a random story, but keep going.
I had become friends with him, and then I was fascinated with his character and his background.
Yeah.
And he told me that Liza was coming one day.
Which one? Squee! Oh my God, Liza!
Well, the funny thing is about
the Queen
arrives. At the time was the largest square footage record store in the United States, and to get it, he had to go from 86th Street. It was the site of a former Gimbel's department store, and he had to go down a 2-floor escalator. So just to see Liza making the grand entrance, coming down,
oh, lovely!
It was
yeah,
fantastic.
Totally.
But she was very, very matter of fact, very, very low key. She wasn't wearing Halston or anything like that. But she was very nice, and then what happened was this place was like my Studio 54. I mean, literally every day, John Updike would come in with Susan Sontag.
Like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm much more on the John Updike's sake than I am Liza. Sorry, Liza, but I'm with John at this point.
Just literally could not believe Sean and Yoko would come in, Woody and Soon Yi, JFK Jr. It was that every single day. It was like it was just never stopped.
Brilliant.
It was in every household names.
Yeah.
So I'm in there. It's Christmas time, and a couple from Portugal comes in. Now in the 90s, I remember CDs were still very popular, and they were very, very expensive in Europe compared to America.
No, totally.
What would cost? It would be 3 or 4 times the cost in Europe than it would be in America.
Yeah.
So a couple who was older, late 60s, were coming in and they were buying Christmas shopping, and they spoke Portuguese, and they spoke very, very little English. So I said, português. And I led them to my friend, and he opens up the door, and they were just thrilled to death.
And get on like a house on fire. No, brilliant. Yeah.
And they come back to me as I am standing in the classical music department, and Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas and
I know
Sopranos,
that name, exactly.
He's standing there, and I'm going, can I help you, sir? And he didn't want to be, he was very humble. He didn't want me to be bought. Then these two people came back and they thanked me profusely. So he was very humble. He said,
oh, lovely.
Yeah,
okay.
And he stood back and he realized I was just being nice to everybody.
Oh, that's very sweet. No, that's really good. I like this. And I love the fact you left Liza on the escalator as well, bless.
Well, she was, she didn't really want to be, like
the star or whatever. Yeah, totally.
Have a fuss made over her. She was just there to say hi and do a little bit of shopping. But, she was, and when people are doing the very ordinary, everyday things, it takes all the glamour away from them.
It does, rather. I mean, even my loathing, and I'm sorry, it's an absolute visceral loathing and hatred of musicals and show tunes. That's kind of impressive. I'll take that.
We did have one girl who worked in the jazz and new wave section, and she broke off her engagement to her fiance because they disagreed on which was a superior production, the original Showboat in Broadway or the original Showboat on the West End.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, my God. I'm sorry.
It's not really Showboat.
Both of them should, honestly. Oh, Lordy.
But, it's like, you were engaged to a gay man.
They wouldn't survive for 2 seconds in Britain. I'm sorry. No.
So
yeah, sorry.
Again, it's probably going to be the same answer. What was the biggest personal challenge you have faced? Personal injury, seeming overwhelming task, a personal or professional or difficult situation you had to overcome? What would you say that would have been?
One that immediately springs to mind is, again, back to Georgia. When things went kind of pear-shaped, I was in London talking to a British MP and a British Lord of the House of Lords about going to Ajara on a kind of fact-finding mission, i.e. finding out what the situation was, because there was a lot of kind of bad reporting about what was going on in Georgia, in Ajara at that time. Lies. And as a journalist, again, trying to remain neutral, but patently not doing very well at it, I wanted the world to see what was actually happening. So they were kind of going to arrange to go back with me, etc., etc. Then obviously things went pear-shaped with two things. Okay, it was termed as a revolution, but I remember doing a piece for CNN down the phone in terms of Atlanta. Hi, Atlanta. Hugo, you're on the ground in Batumi. What can you see? Well, okay, I can see people coming out of attack helicopters and driving tanks. So the central government's characterization of this as an popular uprising is complete nonsense. Everything went completely to pot at that point. The central government screamed. CNN sacked me. And then 2 weeks later, actually phoned back and said, sorry, actually, we've checked and you were right. And okay, we believe you. But anyway, so that was a moment of what to believe when it comes to journalism. But the moment in particular that was the most challenging was when I found out the news that everything was going haywire, as it were, in Georgia. I had 4 cats in Georgia. So fundamentally, A, as a journalist, I wanted to get back ASAP to follow the story. But B, as a cat owner, I wanted to rescue my cats.
I love it. I've had a cat. He was my best pal in the whole world. 17 and a half years.
Oh,
he was
bless.
My baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got him as a kitten. We adopted him from the shelter, and he turned out to be handsome and the best pal I ever had in my whole life.
And would you go into a war zone for him? I would have, rather, because he's not with us anymore.
I would.
Yeah.
I was fiercely in love with this cat.
So I fly to Istanbul, and then Istanbul down to Trabzon in Turkey, and then you take a 3-hour drive along the Black Sea. It's very scenic, but when you're in a bit of a rush to work out... Anyway, the closer I get to Batumi, to the border, my Georgian mobile starts working, ringing off the hook with friends saying in Georgia, in Batumi, saying, "What are you doing? Why are you coming? It's complete madness." I'm like, "What? I've got to see this through, and I want to see the end. And also my cats." And like, yes. Oh God, you British and your bloody cats. But no, you get to the border and they're like, "Hello, we've been waiting for you." And I'm still in this kind of patina, this kind of bubble of Western journalist, knowing things could go either one way. But so swat that off, get into a taxi, go down the hill. And it's an incredible drive anytime, let alone in wartime. And there's trace of fire. There are actual tanks trundling along. The taxi's like, excuse me, sorry, dodging in and out. And I get home. Cats are fine, thank God. Phone starts ringing again. It's the TV station where I work, saying, help, help, we're under attack. Because what happens during a revolution and invasion, where do you go first? You go for the palace, the government, and then you go to the TV station. So I phone my interpreter, my translator, Hatuna, and say, do you mind? Are you okay with this? And she's like, no, I'm with you. I'll come with you. Don't worry. We'll do this. And we get to the TV station, and there is, of course, an angry mob outside, all screaming, let us in, blah, blah. And this terrified, 19, 20-year-old Georgian conscript standing at the door with his gun shaking visibly. So I'm like, okay, all in English at this point. I think don't speak Russian. My Georgian was pretty crap as well. Speak English and be English, i.e. so if anything happens, then it's an international, anyway, whatever. So, excuse me, no, don't punch me yet, sorry. And we get to the front, and the Georgian conscript, poor thing, shoves his gun in my ribs and says in Georgian something like, no, not coming in. And I say very loudly in English, yes, I effing am, get that effing gun out of my effing ribs, I'm coming in. Grab Hatuna, shove him out of the way, and go in. And that was dumb as hell, because as Hatuna said quite rightly, Hugo, he wouldn't have shot you, he would have shot me. So that was exhilarating, but also the most unethical thing I think I've done as well, because she's right. I mean, they're not going to kill the Western journalist. Anyway, nobody got shot, but I failed to rescue the TV station. I phoned the British ambassador, and she was like, well, you're in the mess. You knew what was... thanks, bye, click. So anyway, yeah, it was just...
Wow.
But I needed to be there. I mean, again, throughout my 3.5 years of living in Georgia, the people were the country. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Georgia, but go. They call a guest a gift from God. And if you're a friend of theirs, then you're a friend for life. And the friends I made there... Oh, and now, hang on, I left in 2004. So 20 years on, are still best friends. So incredible, so important, and so entirely part of my life.
I actually wound up working with a load of people who were offshored and came to New York because they loved the opportunity. Of course, most of them wound up living in Brooklyn or in Jersey City. People from Belarus.
Oh, God, yes. Okay.
And,
which is even more of a basket case. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, these guys are all down to earth, and they're very much... they're like European rednecks in the sense that they do things all scrap pieces, big things together.
I love that phrase. Okay, European rednecks.
yeah, but they're not harsh. They're the kind of the redneck, the way a redneck builds things.
I'm with you.
Builds things out. They do everything. It's all Rube Goldberg and everything, and that's their mentality. And I remember them telling me that they were working still for pennies on the American dollar when they were here, but the money they could save by living together
would be
and send it home would make them a hero.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
So they told me that they laughed at Americans who were willing to throw away money on exported vodka, especially Stolchnaya or something like that. They say, that's an entire month's salary. Nobody would do that. Everybody's got their own moonshiner, and some of them will make you go blind, and some of them taste like honey. But everybody knows somebody that you go to.
Yeah.
You don't do this stuff. This is for tourists.
You've again kind of put your finger on it. Again, one needs to separate the state from the people. Again, when I come out to Russia, Ukraine's a separate case, but because Ukraine is absolutely on the side of heroes, Russia at the moment is absolutely on the side of devils and evilness and horribleness. But when you talk to the Russians themselves, they're not like that. They're not Putin. They're not stooges, whatever. And the same with Belarus, which is this obviously appalling satellite state of Russia, run by an absolute, is it Lukashenko?
Yeah, he is a monster.
Yeah, exactly. Just appalling. But again, the Belarusians that one meets that you've met they're not the state. They are people. And they're people just like us, basically. That's one thing I loved being in Georgia. You arrive in 2001, and people are like, what musical instrument do you play? I'm like, the recorder? I'm like, well, hang on, because I've got a violin. I play the piano. They're so incredibly cultured. They've read all of Dickens. They've read all of Hardy. And they're like, you're thinking, oh, Christ on a bike. I just came here to present the news. And you're asking about Hardy? Brilliant, stunning.
Something's funny is in being, especially a New Yorker,
Yeah.
you're perceived as being bougie and a little bit more pretentious. But the funny thing is, we have our newsstands that they sell. There's the tobacconists, and they also sell lottery tickets. And the guys who work there, almost entirely from India or Bangladesh, they speak 4 to 6 languages.
Yeah.
And to become an American citizen, they know more about American history. They know their own country's history. 100%. They know our country's history, and they can speak a number of languages. Yeah. Americans can't even speak English.
No, totally. Yeah.
And they're basically ignorant of just about anything that isn't beyond their tactile sensation range.
Yeah.
And they don't care.
Exactly
and,
right.
And those are for people who are prospering.
Okay, Tim, quick question if I may, again, turning the tables to ask you questions. Have you lived abroad at any point, or...?
I've traveled, but I haven't lived abroad. I mean, and I've gone to the UK and I've been in North America for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's been limited by, just family obligations.
No, sure. But no period of time, like a year, 2 years of living in another country, that type of thing.
No, maybe like an extended summer or something like that, And with my mother was from Dublin, and my parents lived in England.
Fantastic, yeah.
My mother actually lived. My mother was a victim of the Magdalene sisters.
I'm with you.
Ireland, and she was one of 11 children, and 4 of them died before they reached maturity.
Do you want to explain to the listeners what the Magdalene or Magdalene sisters were about? I mean, it's a horrible story, but people might not know. Sorry, just to.
The laundry,
give the context.
The laundry for fallen women, and my mother was actually just because out of poverty and ignorance. My mother even told the story of her sister, who I would have been named after if I was a girl. Had died of scarlet fever, tied to all 4 posts of the bed, retching and screaming.
It's appalling stuff.
And they had no people, ignorance and lack of access to medical care, poverty. My grandfather had been he worked in. He died in 1933. He served in the British Army during World War I to make a living. Most of his shoulder shot out, so we just hung there. He died of tuberculosis in 1933, but because he had papers to travel, he was Eamon de Valera's personal courier.
Okay, that's interesting.
During his funeral, my mother almost fell into the grave during the cannons of the gunshot.
Yeah.
And then after that, she was sent to live with the Magdalene sisters, who tortured her for years.
No, it was a nasty story.
Yes, and it was actually a tormentor. My mother, out of a sense of obligation, when my 2 oldest sisters were toddlers, she took a boat to visit Ireland. She went back to Ireland, and she, out of a sense of obligation, she went to go visit the Magdalene sisters. And the cruelest, harshest one reached her arms out to grab my sister, one of my sisters, and my mother instinctively pulled her back.
Yeah, winced and flinched. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, because she realized this old woman couldn't do anything to this baby, but
even
because
so,
the memory of how cruel she was, and how sadistic and and they were, and they truly were.
Sadistic is the word. Yeah.
So my mother lived in England. She started in the buzz bombings. She lived with her oldest sister, who had 9 kids. She lived from 1941 until 1952. And then she wound up in Cambridge with my dad. My dad was in Camp Mildenhall. He was a tech sergeant in the Air Force.
Okay,
he had been recalled from the Army. He was at Fort Dix.
So he was the American GI, like, hi.
He was a sergeant.
I'm Brad. I'm Chet. What was your dad's name, sorry?
My father's name was Thomas S. Cook.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm Tom with a big jaw. Like, hello, I'm an American accent at this point. It's like, hello,
he was a big dancer. They met on Christmas Day.
Perfect.
At a church function.
No, that's a lovely story.
Brilliant. They were very. Both of them were very
drunk
Catholics.
Oh, sorry, Catholics.
Yes. And they were married in Newmarket on Fergus, and they lived on Garlick Row in Cambridge. After he was,
I shall Google that a bit later. Brilliant. It's a lovely story. Meeting on Christmas Day as well. Oh, very romantic.
1951.
Lovely.
So
brilliant.
Yes, and then she came, and then my mother's story was very much paralleled by, I think, it was Neil Jordan's film Brooklyn.
Yep, I'm with you.
That's my mom. So that's basically her story.
Fantastic.
So that's what she went through. But she had living in absolute poverty. In Dublin, on the north side of Dublin, and I've been there many times, and all that with the family. I've been to I can go into my Irish accent. I usually do.
Oh, come on. Let's hear it. This one. Come on.
Well, my mother would say things to us like, "Will you stop acting Mickey the idiot?" And we thought that was an everyday.
Okay, you're going to
Irish
have to
expression.
do that again because you went very quickly there.
Will you stop acting Mickey the idiot? Will we have no peace in this house tonight?
Okay,
Right?
that's okay, I'm not Irish, so I'm not going to say that's good or bad, but it sounds sort of convincing.
Well, that's me, mom. That's me, mom. And I was speaking to Irish people thinking that this was an everyday Irish expression. And they would say, "What's that?" And I say,
yeah, exactly.
And they say, "Is that an American term?"
You eat it.
And I'd say, "I thought this was Irish," and they'd say, "No, never heard of it." So I've had I don't want to get because some people who I know who are Irish think I'm very good because I can do actually different accents from different areas.
Okay, that's quite good. Yeah.
I'm joking.
So hang on. So how many times have you been to Dublin? In terms of going back and retracing steps, or
like 6 times?
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, totally.
And actually, I've seen Ireland before the transformation, and I have a friend who's from Beijing, and he's saying this. It's very similar in terms of how it's different.
What was the year you first went to Dublin? Sorry.
Oh, 1963.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Okay, yeah, okay, but more sentient at this point in terms of as an adult.
The last time I was there was actually in 1981. And actually, I went to Northern Ireland during the Troubles.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
And I had to go through Checkpoint Charlie, and we went to a pub, and I opened my mouth, and I had the 8 guys tell me to shut up. Because I would have been taken and used as
collateral bait or whatever it might be, hostage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And I would have been killed or kidnapped or something. And I was just, and I'm sitting in a pub and I see a photograph of JFK and an Irish and American flag. I thought everything was great. And they said, no, this is all prop.
It's still not the same. Yeah, exactly. Shut up.
It means something different to people in Ireland than it does. And this is in Northern Ireland. So I had to be very quiet. And then we went to, it was a semi-pro match. It was on a rented field somewhere. And all I remember is I was soaked up to my knees, up to my hips, because we were in a field and the grass was wet and dewy, and I was just so cold. And we went and got drunk, and then we went home and we went out. And
that is a kind of feature of being in Ireland. One does get drunk quite a bit. It's also a feature of being in Britain as well, to be fair. But anyway.
First time I ever heard or saw the video for Physical by Olivia Newton-John was that night. We went out to the disco.
Oh, good Lord. Of all the memories, thank you. But keep going.
That's the memory. That's
good God.
So what would you say was the transformational moment in your life? As a meaningful gift, a reason to belong to something, being not a parent, but a good job, a bad job, or the transformational moment? What would that be? Would that have been the age of consent?
I'm going to give this one to my mum, basically. I didn't come out to her. She kind of nudged me. I was age 15. Excuse me. I was living again in Devon, down in Exeter. We were going through not a rough period, but my dad had left home, divorce was coming, etc., etc. So it was just my mum and myself, living in a 2x2, quite sweet little council house, state housing, whatever, with a garden. So, we were poor, but we didn't have a telephone, basically, because we couldn't afford it. That sort of, level of no money. But she and I had been arguing because I'm 15 and I'm narky and I'm a teenager and I'm a bit of a pain in the ass, about the age of consent. Ho, ho, ho. Who knew what was coming? And watching the films of, do you know Derek Jarman, the British TV film director? Yes. Fantastic. We'd watched one of his, not one of the naughty ones, but one of the...
With your mother.
Yes, exactly. She was very like that, basically. I mean, quick background about my mum. She was a punk, My dad was a hippie, she was a punk. She would be the type of character that would nip up to Debenhams, which is a retail store in the UK.
I know Debenhams, yes.
Oh, there you go, exactly. At Christmas, and you'd have Father Christmas sitting, going ho, ho, ho. And she'd turn up with a friend, being a punk. She'd be wearing a bin liner and various safety pins to cover up things with the bin liner, sit on Santa's lap, and then get thrown out of Debenhams. That was
very Vivian Westwood.
Very Vivian Westwood. That was a star, basically. I F you the world. And she's rather brilliant as a mum. The type of mum whereby I remember kind of coming... Oh, God, 4th or 3rd in some running competition in the entire school. I was like, oh, good Lord, how on earth did I do that? And I went back home and said, okay, they've asked me to run for the county. And I was like, I don't want to do it. My mum said, then don't. Which is a wonderful thing. With her saying,
thanks, man.
you don't have to do what other people want you to do. But the school said they have to. She's like, yeah, just don't turn up. Anyway, so that was kind of the punk mentality that she had. I not quite screwed the world, but follow your own path, don't care about convention. So come 15, again, arguing over Derek Jarman movies, age consent, she asked, excuse me, the immortal question, do you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, anything you'd like to tell me? And we went from there. And that was an absolutely epoch-making moment. I mean, that was the start of me, I guess, to a large extent. The open me, not the start of me, but the open me. And I said, I think you've already guessed. He's like, yeah.
No one was surprised when I came out.
I find that hard to believe. Really? No, but yeah, exactly.
Knock me over with a feather.
Oh my God. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, again, to give her all credit and all glory and love, which is still with us, thank God. That changed my life. And I mean, back to, again, the backbone that she'd given me to say no to crap, that you don't want to do, which I love her for to this day and will love her forever, it's just brilliant. I mean, it's what you need when growing up. Everyone needs a punk mum, basically, to say, screw the system, screw your teachers, screw everybody. If you don't want to do it, just don't. So I love her for that. And again, the age 15 coming out moment was just, that was for me the moment that, changed my life.
I actually wrote something on this gay page. I said the moment that changed me as a gay man was I was 19 years old, and until then, being gay was really just self-gratification of being gratified in the company of other people.
No, totally.
And fantasizing about them. And it was a kiss. It was a prolonged, very extraordinarily rapturous, ecstatic, sensual kiss with another boy.
How old were you at this point?
I was 19.
Okay.
It took me until I was 19 to actually
for the year.
Realize how great it was to be gay.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand otherwise all I was really interested in was self-gratification. And until then, just that exchange.
That's fine.
But that exchange of sensuality, that went back and forth. I kept on saying it was like feeling electricity in the special effect in the movie, going back and forth.
Oh God, yes. And I remember that.
And I just remember that, what that was like. And then getting up and I was like, now I'm alive. Now I'm gay.
Okay, and age 19 as well. What year are we in this point?
1979.
Good Lord. Well, there you go. I mean, I was in, age 15, 78. No, that made me 5. 88. Okay. Yeah, hang on. So we're a decade apart, but doing the same thing, basically.
Yeah, and I went to a Catholic all-boys high school.
Oh, good God, no, it gets worse.
The same high school that graduated Glenn Hughes, the original Leatherman for the Village People.
Oh, okay.
And the next year, Bill O'Reilly, the horrible...
yes, I know the name.
Conservative author, former television host. My younger brother, now we're from Long Island. My younger brother, who's my best friend outside of my husband, really he was a magnet for the girls when he was younger. He had so many girls, and
he was quite good looking. He was quite pretty, quite charming.
Very much.
I was an irritating best friend. It's so annoying.
He had the girls loved my brother, and my brother loved the girls. And he was at a party in Franklin Square, New York, which is the same town that Sean Hannity was from.
Okay, yeah.
And he got into a verbal altercation, and it was just about everything he could do to hold back and not clock this guy. And but we keep saying, Tommy, you should have punched him out. You could have changed the course of history.
Totally, totally. If only.
He just wanted to save face and not lose his cool in front of the girls.
From that kind of 15-year-old moment of, mama, revelation, not much of a revelation, I came out probably pretty pronto, or actually before, excuse me, a friend who was mad in love with, I said, okay, sod it. What would you say if I told you there was madly in love with you. It's like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I'm like, yeah, and anyway, but I came out not necessarily at school, but the girls ran the school. It's a co-ed school, but the girls ran it and protected me like crazy. Yeah, there were kind of comments of puff, fag, queer, whatever in the corridor, but the girls would basically come back and go slap, slap, slap. How dare you? Shut up, blah, blah. And they were brilliant. They were absolutely. So it made my life, forgive me, quite easy in the sense of coming out. And I remember going to my first gay club, again, age 15, called The Loft in Exeter, and meeting a guy also age 15. Well, bad, underage drinkers we were, who had long blonde hair and was called Alan, and we're still in touch today, and gorgeous. And we snogged that night. So yes, life starts and goes on.
When you have that moment that electrifies you.
Oh God, yes.
It just brings everything out. You didn't understand what it is that straight people found so engrossing and enrapturing, and this was just rapturous.
Because one thing we don't have a Cinderella syndrome in the sense that we don't grow up. Oh, sorry, didn't. I mean, kids nowadays do have this. We don't grow up with the idea that we're going to get married, have kids, fall in love, blah blah. Which that Cinderella pattern syndrome, whatever you call it. Okay, queer kids nowadays they have that hopefully, but you and I. No, we just had to make it up as we went along, basically, which was great.
We suffered.
Gleeful. Yeah. Well, suffered schmufford, but...
we just took the brickbats. We took the insults and we took the demeaning, the denigration.
Yeah.
We just had to weather that and deal with a lot of, the marginalization and the dismissal of people. And I went up going to culinary school, and I took a number of... I thought I was going to be a saucier, and I took a number of pastry gigs along the way.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was such a stereotypical gay job.
Well, you could have been a hairdresser or a male nurse. I mean, whatever.
That's what it was. It was basically a choreographer. You just say anything that just comes to mind as being gay.
Yeah, totally.
And
that's great. But that's great.
You were never expected to be the bank vice president, or you were never expected to be
an engineer. Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
Quite.
Like that, Even though I had a list, I kept a list of about 22 guys who I called them my bi-curious buddies from Long Island, who all wanted to catch me in a clinch and have sex, and then go back to their girlfriends, and it's a complete denial about anything.
And how many of those 22 did you work your way through?
Just a few. Most of them,
You're being coy now. How many did you tick off?
Oh, I'd say about 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's not very good, honestly.
No. It would have been too awkward, because at the time it was one of those things where you just, if you would be caught in an off guard moment.
No, fair. That's true.
Other people,
but we're gay. We shank hello, basically. So.
Yeah, it just even being out was it was something that
hello 70s 80s
invited harsh criticism and the threats of physical intimidation were ever present.
Massively.
Especially this is in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah,
it was a very different story. So we actually got a thicker skin, I think, a lot of us, and we. So many people I know have a positive and passed away.
And then again, you beat me to it. I was going to say, and then that gets us to the early 80s and AIDS, basically. I was again 51 to your, forgive me, 64. So I was just on the cusp, because I imagined growing up again, 19, 20, 21, that I'd spend my mid 20s. Late 20s going to funerals, and I was just on the cusp of retrovirals, basically. I think they came in, was it 92, 93, something like that?
I had a friend of mine. Well, I knew a number of people from 91 on who were positive, and they one of them is thriving right now. He's doing extraordinarily well. But one of my close friends passed away about 7 or 8 years ago, but he lived in New York, and he was a bartender. He was what they would now call a mixologist. He didn't even know what that was. And he would have been
cocktail shaker, but
quintessential
Tom Cruise.
But he was fantastic.
Yeah.
And he was a really sweet guy. And I did a little creative project with him once. I was on jury duty, and I got Adobe Classroom in a book, and I learned what green screening was.
Yeah.
And I dropped him into Cher's Believe, and it played in a few bars in the city. and I played in a few nightclubs. And the copy that I finally wound up seeing was the degenerated VHS copy, is like the 7th or 8th generation, because DJs kept on giving it to each other.
Brilliant.
And he would drop him into clubs all over the place. So he had moved after having such a tough struggle in New York back to Oklahoma, where his family had embraced him.
Yeah. Okay. At least that's something.
And he actually very strong family resemblance. The gene pool is strong. He has two or three brothers, and they all look very strikingly similar. And he met somebody who was also positive. They got married, and he passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, sorry.
But in the intervening years, he reached out to me, and he asked me if by any chance I'd be willing to, and if I had the copy of that video. I said, of course.
Actually, I do. Yes.
And I sent it to him, and he was so grateful to me.
Yeah.
And after he passed, his brother reached out to me, and he told me how much it meant to him.
Oh,
I didn't
brilliant.
realize.
Yeah.
So that was
lovely.
great, and it was very nice of his brother too.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that.
No,
so that
totally.
was very sweet. That was a very sweet year. But those guys, there were so many people that had a lipotrophy, a liotrophy,
which is, forgive me.
It's a condition where when people were first starting their retrovirals, the fat would collect in different parts of your body.
Yes,
and
I did hear. Yes, I've read about that. Yes.
And that will happen to a lot of people. And there's one particular bar that we went to. The owner was he was another unthanked saint, because he gave so many guys who would have been thrown into the street opportunities to work and make a living.
No, brilliant. Well done, as it were. Yeah, entirely.
Yeah, so the number of these guys who worked in this place were positive. And a number of them weren't, but I have to see so many people who otherwise, you would have been a stockbroker, you would have been something else, and that was ripped away from you.
I think so many people, particularly straight people, not ignoring younger gay people, younger queer people at the moment, but forget how present. I mean, I look at my kind of a group of, say, 10 gay male friends, 10 closest gay male friends, and 7 are HIV positive. And thank God for antiretrovirals, thank God for medical advances. They will all live and die at the same, probably later than me being a smoker. But for a couple of years, I missed, thank God, on the funerals. But that was only by a couple of years. And again, talking to friends who are kind of 4 or 5 years older, that was their life. You didn't
even know. All of a sudden, someone would just stop being around, and you didn't know. God, you'd have to find out.
Horrible.
And then they already died. And usually, it was so quick. It came, and it was shocking.
Yeah.
And so many people suddenly, they weren't. Especially they weren't in Manhattan. They were from
back with their friend. Sorry, back with their family rather. Yes, of course.
And or they came from someplace else, and they couldn't even have the energy to get up and get out, and we didn't know until after the fact. So that was one of those things where you just couldn't believe how many people went away, and then you found out that they were ill and they had passed, or they were ill. And then I have a friend of mine who is about 30 years younger than me. And he's from Belgium, and he was another guest on my show. And he's positive, and he had no idea. And he was a policeman, and he was working a music festival, and he contracted the only person possible, and they did through backtracking. That he became infected during this festival, and this was, I'd say, probably about 10 years ago, or about 6 or 7 years ago. He suddenly got pneumonia. And it was baffling to people. No one could understand it.
Yes.
And he was intubated in the hospital. And then they found out, they did some tests, and they found out that he was positive. But this guy now runs marathons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's livable. It's you can, again, as a drinker and a smoker. Yeah, I'm almost certainly going to die before my HIV positive friends. Absolutely. And I won't say that's great, but yes, it's become livable, like diabetes, thank God. So yes, we've moved on enormously. And again, hallelujah for that.
But the thing is also and I just don't. I think one of the things that we do terribly is that we underplay the significance of this, because it transforms your life, and you don't understand the ordeal and the issues and the conditions that you have to go through for any STI. I have a friend who's hepatitis 3. He supposedly cured from it, but he's on meds for life. And the conditions that change your life, you can't eat certain foods. The only different things you can't do.
It is for life, as you say.
And you have to be in proximity of a specialty pharmacy for the rest of your life.
And I don't think straight people or the wider society realize this. Again, when I went on PrEP for the first time, HIV negative results. It's still terrifying. I need to go and have another one soon, but whatever. And I was given PrEP. I started crying because for the first time I was going to have sex, hopefully, without the fear of dying, which had been there for the last 20 odd. Fuck me. So I can have sex without being terrified of fuck. And the magnitude, again, I was just there in the doctor's office, whatever, sobbing. And the poor doctor was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yes, I am. I can't quite grasp this." Yeah, totally.
I remember the first when I started going to bathhouses, and I was a habitué of
hello, sleazy.
Pardon me?
Hello, sleazy.
Well, of the in New York, without a doubt, the greatest bathhouse. It's not the Continental for me. It was the St. Mark's Bathhouse.
Okay, I'll have to take your word for that.
The St. Mark's Bathhouse was owned by the same guy who owned the legendary nightclub, The Saints, in the East Village. It was inside the former Fillmore East. That was also a legendary rock place. Fillmore East was where both the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner developed.
I know of it, but never been there, I don't think. But yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's now a bank in East Village. It's unremarkable.
But of course. Or a Starbucks or whatever. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And but the St. Mark's Bathhouse is actually another landmark. It's where James Fenimore Cooper wrote Last of the Mohicans.
Yes.
So it can't be torn down.
Entirely.
But I remember going in there as a 19-year-old, and it was a frenzy from the moment you stepped in.
And that's what you want, age 19. Frenzy. Give me frenzy.
And then it became, as I wrote, the thing is, one night I was at a club, which is not that far away. It was a little farther east in a much more sketchy neighborhood in those days, in First and First, which was very, very desolate. And you would not want to be alone in that neighborhood.
Oh, God, exactly.
And you'd be held up at gunpoint and stuff like that. So this place, I was in there, and there was an older man. He was in his 30s. And he was sitting in his room with the lights up, and he had printed materials. And he started asking me questions, and he lectured me.
Yeah.
And he quizzed me, and he told me not to be ashamed of myself. And I became a little irritated with him because he was under the impression that I was ashamed. Yeah,
it does sound quite patronizing somehow. It's like, I don't need to know this. I'm not ashamed. I'm enjoying myself, whatever, but okay, fine.
Well, it wasn't that so much as that he thought I was ashamed of coming out of a gay bathhouse to try to get a cab. And no, it was the middle of winter, and you couldn't get a cab in those days in that neighborhood. So I'd have to walk over to 2nd or 3rd Avenue to get a cab, because otherwise I'd be standing there, a sitting duck in the freezing cold.
Not a chance. Yeah, exactly.
And but otherwise, that was the first time I became aware. And what happened was, right there, it was the winter of 82 to 83. So right after that, there was no more ambient body heat, and your feet stayed cold. And I knew it was over. There wasn't anybody going to the baths anymore.
No, exactly at that point.
Because people were dying.
And hang on. Yes. Okay. Again, awful question, but how many of your friends died? Sorry to ask a rather personal question.
Well, I mean, how do you define a friend? I mean, people that I knew or people who were good friends, because the people I knew, I'd tell you the hundreds.
Good Lord, hundreds. Gosh.
Yeah, in Manhattan,
no, sure. But Jesus Christ.
Between the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. And then friends, I would say about 7 and 10. And, a few people who I know I'm still friendly with, but I would not say good friends are still doing well.
Yeah.
And other people, passed away.
And again, I don't think people really realize the magnitude of this, just how much it affected not just yourself, not just our community, but just, again, the magnitude. When you say hundreds, I mean, good God.
Yeah, it was people you knew, and then if you saw them again, you'd be overjoyed.
Yes, quite.
And sorry,
did you have any more questions for me?
Yes, I do, actually. Okay. What drives you? What gets you up in the morning?
I love this question. The passion for writing. I love writing. It rewind to when I was age 12, 13, 14. I would sit in cafes, on the back of brown envelopes. I would write any old crap. wasn't necessarily a diary keeper, but I've got shoe boxes full of unfinished novels, of started musings, of whatever. I always wanted to write in whatever fashion, so I became a journalist. So a hack, basically, a writer for money. Yeah, I'll take that. But also a writer for passion. Again, when I launched openly the LGBTQ plus news website for the Thomson Reuters Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Reuters, that was absolutely a passion project. It's unfortunate that still to this day, we need to tell stories, again, untold stories from Africa, from South America, from India, from the Far East, of people, gay lives, queer lives, which are not being heard. So again, what gets me up in the morning is the desire to keep telling those stories, to keep writing.
This is the thing too. In America, I think it's like 70 to 80% of people are still in the closet.
Yes.
And
yeah.
it's usually and I've seen I've let people off the hook because I've seen that look. I felt that
Hang on. So who are you letting off the hook here?
People who have been inadvertently outed.
Okay. Yeah.
And let that slide because you can see them being just like their whole world, their mental construct is collapsing.
Yes, quite.
And it's not my idea. I don't believe in cruelty. I always say you are who you are in your own time.
And you don't believe in outing, do you?
I say you are who you are in your own time unless you deliberately hurt people.
If you're a hypocrite, exactly. Yeah, precisely.
If you're a hypocrite, it's a fair game.
Some stupid evangelical blah, blah, whatever, yeah, quite. I agree.
Phony Oscar-winning actor.
Of which are quite a few, yes.
I've actually had experiences with people who are very successible.
Just to remind you about the laws of slander here, but keep going.
So I'm not going to mention any names.
No, thank you.
But one of them was, and it was a completely non-sexual experience. But you are the most insufferable. I mean.
You got to tell me. Okay, who? You can edit this bit out. Who?
Now you can easily guess.
I think I already have.
It's a famous closet case in show business.
Yeah.
And then someone else who is a beloved actor who I think he was exploring at the time. He was very shy. He was nervous and edgy, and it was okay. He was fine. It wasn't the greatest time I had in my life, but I had the bragging rights of saying I had
exactly. Yeah, totally.
So and then of course just. Being in the proximity of a whole load of people who, it turns out, they spent so much of their time in the village in Chelsea before I showed up.
Yeah,
so totally. They were so inveterate. And everybody I was very friendly with Peter Allen.
Oh, who's that, sorry?
He is the one who wrote Legs Diamond and Rio and Arthur's Song.
I think I'm with you, not sure. Yeah.
He was married to Liza.
Oh, yes, I'm with you. Okay, thank you. What about your bloody show tunes? But keep going.
And then in his entourage, and I had bumped into him earlier in my 20s, but in his entourage every Monday night when we would go out would be Nathan Lane.
Oh, hello.
Before he came out.
Yes.
But exactly. He was absolutely, he was an ingenue or a prodigy or whoever you want to say what he was because he did Terrence McNally plays, including the Lisbon Traviata. Yes, and he was known as he was a supernova of a young star.
Yeah, totally.
And he would be in the entourage with this guy, and he would just come in along with everybody else. And I would chat with Peter Allen. He was very friendly. He was very nice. He was already positive at the time, and he was ill, but he was holding on. I think he was on retrovirals.
Okay.
He was doing a Broadway musical.
And don't worry, the phone is still with me, so it's all recording.
Okay, I guess I understand. So and these people were all inveterate New Yorkers. As I was becoming more, my roots were getting firmer.
Yeah.
And becoming more aware of the fact that okay, these guys. Because I always knew Nathan Lane as a guy from Jersey City.
You are quite a name dropper, aren't you?
but I like it. Very nice.
Bring it on, exactly.
And then
that's a great story.
I always say that story. I have very funny stories about a number of celebrities, and that's one of the things that live in Manhattan is like you do.
So hang on, you've got a number of stories about celebrities. I'm not going to let that one pass. Give me a story. Don't name them. Or name them. What stories do you have?
Okay, well, here's a good one. My husband was very fond of a cologne called Jean Dawn.
Okay.
And it was available in Los Angeles by mail order or in Barney's, New York. And Barney's, New York has since gone out of business.
Yep.
So one of the people I became very friendly with who worked at Barney's was a fellow who sort of looked like a gay Penn Jillette, the magician.
Not really. Keep going anyway, yeah.
He Penn and Teller of the magicians.
I'm with you, yep.
So, he looked like a gay version of him.
Okay.
But he was a very friendly guy, and he worked at men's colognes. And every time he'd see me, he would make a big fuss over me like I was a VIP. So all the other people working on the floor giving out samples would rush over to me thinking that I was rich.
Well, maybe because he fancied you. But anyway, let's move on. Yeah, sorry.
Well, but he knew that. He knew my story. And I'd known him for years and years.
Yeah.
So, and Barney's had several different locations. They were on 7th Avenue and 17th Street, and on Madison Avenue, I think 62nd Street or something.
Yeah.
And one time I went up to the 62nd Street store, and as I go to the door, the guy who played the villain in Die Hard 2 held the door open for me.
Bloody hell, I'll take that. That's kind of cool.
Okay,
yeah.
So I walk in, and I'm standing there, and my friend is
cool.
on break. He's not there. There's two girls manning the station while he's on lunch or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there. And I don't really want to buy this. This is Christmas time. I'm buying this for my husband. I said, I really want to buy this from them. I want my friend to get the credit for the sale.
Yeah.
So I said, do you mind if I wait until Tyler comes back so he can get credit for the sale? They said, oh, no, don't worry about it. No, so I just prefer that he got credit for the sale.
That's kind of cool. Okay.
So I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, as I said that, Mr. Union, Mr. Labor, to my left, sidles over to me from about 10 feet away, stands right next to me, and I do a triple take, and I'm looking at Bruce Springsteen.
Bloody hell. Okay, bloody hell. Okay, you're fine. Yeah. Not bad, and love, not bad.
Then the personal shopper comes and takes him away. And in Barney's, they had a personal shopper. They had somebody on staff with your measurements. So they would try on clothes for you, so you wouldn't have to try clothes on. So you could just sit in a chair drinking champagne or a cappuccino.
Exactly.
And there'd be a three-way mirror, and they would see what it would look like on you. So they'd come away, and that was it. So I go to the girl and I go, did you just see what that was? And you just missed Richard Pryor, Richard Gere, and Michael Jackson.
Okay, wow.
And I look down the hall, and there's Richard Gere and Michael Jackson. So in one day, I had the guy from Die Hard, Bruce Springsteen, Richard Gere, and Michael Jackson in my line of sight at the exact same time. So that was my big big celebrity rock star story.
There's a thing in the UK about taxi drivers. You always say, over got in the back of my cab. And taxi drivers are notorious name droppers. You never guess who I had in the back of my cab the other day. So that you. Oh, really? You were the New York version of a taxi driver. Well, I had Rick Springsteen. I had Michael Jackson.
People tell me I'm Forrest Gump of my age.
I'm not sure that's a compliment, but anyway.
Yeah, I know. I never thought of it that's such a lovely compliment. But it was.
I'm not going to compete, but I can compete. Okay, it's not a celebrity story, but it's more of a kind of like a rubbish student story. I rewind to when I was aged 19, 20 at this point. Again, up at Edinburgh, when I was actually there rather than doing the Age Consent campaign on the road. And actually, no, hang on, it was after that. It was my final year. In Edinburgh, in Scotland, you do 4 years at university rather than 3 in England. So my 4th year, I had to do 2 years in one because I missed on my 3rd year. So I moved outside of town thinking, right, I won't go to parties or whatever. Yeah, lie. So I moved to a small place called Joppa, which I don't know if you know Edinburgh at all, but you've got Portobello by the beach, and then next door is Joppa, which nobody ever goes to because it's like very bourgeois, very old age, whatever. So
that's what the sandals are named after? Joppa?
No. In a way, no. But yeah, nice try. So I'm living in Joppa with the headmaster of one of Scotland's poshest schools. I'm not going to name it. Who said, okay, right, Hugo, blah, blah, I know your background. He was also gay, but also not out because headmaster, in those years.
Oh, yeah, sure.
One thing you must not ever do is bring people back. I'm like, good, don't worry. I'm here to study because I've got to do 2 years in one. I'm not bringing anyone back. And a friend of mine who was directing Sunset Boulevard in London came up to Edinburgh. It's like, great, we'll have a drink. Just a quiet drink. You can see what's coming. And he was like, oh, okay, fine, we'll go and see a show. I think it was Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And again, I hate musicals. Fine. I said, fine,
That's a
fine,
good one to
fine.
hate.
Yeah, it's an easy one to hate because it's really rubbish. But anyway, sorry, Angela Lloyd Webber. And of course, we meet up with the cast afterwards, and we go out for drinks with the cast afterwards. And we're at a late night pizzeria. And as one does, you meet up with the Scottish national rugby team, because all the girls and the boys of the Joseph and Technicolor Dreamcoat are flashing their boobs and their pecs or whatever, and the Scottish rugby boys are like, oh, I love this. So I'm like, hey everyone, back to mine. So me being banned from bringing anyone else back brought back the entire cast of Joseph and Technicolor Dreamcoat and the Scottish national rugby team.
That's brilliant.
Sorry.
And how long did it take to return the residence to its former state?
Yeah, okay, exactly. How bad was the damage? It was very bad.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I would imagine that was a rough one.
But anyway.
Okay, so what's the first thing you want to come to people's minds when they think of you?
Well, at the moment, it's the book. The Diaries bring about to the book. The Diaries of Mr. Lucas.
Please tell me more.
Yeah.
And this is something we need to talk about.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, again, it's been a labour of love and passion. Again, I'm not sure I explained, but I met Mr. Lucas in 1994 when I was a researcher on a documentary about male prostitution. So as the researcher, we put adverts in all the gapers, the gay papers, saying, have you been paid for sex? Have you paid for sex? And Mr. Lucas, then in his 60s, I guess, something like that, came forward and said, yes, I have, blah, blah. So as researcher, I was sent around to do the pre-interview. And whilst I was there, chat, I noticed this bank of books, starting off slim, getting crazy and crazier as the shelves went up. And I said, what on earth are those? My diaries, he said. And down they came. And they are full of all manner of, forgive me, collected crap, ephemera, photographs, bus receipts, everything. And the diaries themselves kept every day from, again, 1946 to he had a stroke and then was hit by a car or a van in the early noughties, but kept between 1944 and 2009 every single day. He'd write about his bowel movements, he'd write about the politics, he'd write about the weather, he'd write about his sex life with guardsmen, military types who turned up at the pub to earn a couple of extra shillings and pounds to go out that night with their girlfriends. And I thought, my God, this is a gold mine. So for the next 20 years, literally, I went round to talk to him 3-4 times a year, not just to get my paws on the diaries, but also because the stories were fascinating. He was fascinating. Absolutely. And I think, as you said earlier, he wasn't famous. He wasn't a particularly incredible character, but through his diaries, he was a remarkable man, an unremarkable character, but with remarkable diaries. And they are, and I'm looking at them now. A friend came around the other day to have a rummage through them. And they're just incredible, basically. So I'd like to think two things, come back to your original question. A, that I've done him proud. I think I've done him proud. He always said, after I die, not before I die, but please do something with the diaries. He left them to me in his will.
Oh, really?
Exactly. With the express intent of should Hugo Greenhalgh publish these, blah, blah, all rights therein, thereof, etc., etc. So he absolutely wanted to be remembered, not while I'm still alive. Again, he backed out the documentary saying, no, I don't want to be on television, voice my words with an actor, etc., etc. But that level of diary keeping, again, was incredible. But so I'd like to be remembered as the person who brought him to life, basically.
The thing is, to me, is the impression as an American you only get of Kaijing is as the Stephen Frears movie with Gary Oldman and Albert Molina, Prick Up Your Ears, the Joe Orton enough,
fantastic,
and that's the impression that I get. So that this is the perception that I know. I have no other actual real knowledge of the experience.
Have you been cottaging?
In America, that was my very first cruise was in the Penn Station men's room.
Oh, there you go. So yes, basically, yeah. And again, back to the kind of 50s, 60s, earlier 40s. That was not the only way. I mean, again, Mr. Lucas was a very dry civil servant. He worked for the Board of Trade, which I guess in American terms, the business unit, whatever, blah blah. Again, very much buttoned up character in his 3-piece suit, everything tied on up. When I saw him,
the photo.
Yeah, exactly. When I met him in '94, still in his 3-piece suit, but his black suit then was done up down one side of his arm with safety pins. He was covered in dust, bless him, and whatever detritus was in the flat. The flat hadn't been cleaned for 40 years as well. It was an absolute Miss Havisham flat.
Oh my God.
It stank. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in love.
Yeah.
As a wannabe writer, as at this point a baby journalist, I thought, I mean, F me, wow, basically. So no, in terms of the one thing I'd love to be remembered for is doing him proud, as it were.
Okay, so then what is your Zen?
What do you mean by that?
What is it that gives you that sense of you lose yourself and you just humming along, you feel connected with the universe without being conscious of yourself being inflicted? You just feel in complete harmony.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Okay.
Yeah, no. There've been times when I've walked on the street saying, you rock, as it were. In Georgia, when everything was going weird and everything else was like, great, I'm in the middle of things. I'm in the middle of geopolitics. I'm in the middle of macro events. Oh my God. And writing the book, for me, it's what I wanted as a kid growing up was not to be remarkable, not to be remembered, but to do something significant. And okay, age consent campaign, okay, great. And again, appalling thing to say, but I'm a footnote, a teeny tiny footnote in history. And I love that. Fantastic.
But you rocked on that. And that's part of like your Zen. Like, I makes you, I guess there's a certain sense, like when you go to that place in your mind, you feel fine. And
the problem is you're asking a British person to talk about their ego, and a British person would never do that. I mean, darling, no, not that one.
What's the lose ego? The idea of lost that sense.
I mean, British people aren't very good at boasting. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. My last of my questions is something that I think I've gotten so many very different answers from people.
Okay.
And they all interpret it a different way.
Yeah.
Now, it's called the threshold. And this is the point of no going back. You know that there is no return. You've walked through that threshold, and then suddenly the wall that you walk through is gone. There's nothing there. It's been bricked up, pasted over, and there's nothing, or it's just vanished. And you're at a crossroads. There's nothing you can do but go forward. How did you know when you arrived there? How did it feel to cross it? What was the significance to you? What did you leave behind? And what did you glad you left? And what did you regret leaving behind? That's
a really interesting question, to which I'm afraid I have a one-word answer, a very British one-word answer, which is bollocks. That sounds like, okay, 2 words, utter bollocks. Because there's no such thing, quite frankly. I mean, you can always, reinvent yourself quite easily. There's always going back. There's always revisiting. There's always coming back to stuff. And there's always changing things. There's no such thing as never being able to go back. You're never stuck going forwards. So I'm afraid I think the question, forgive me, is bollocks.
Well, that's fine. I'm glad you're perfect. I've had people tell me all of different types of answers on what it meant to them. I've had people with literary pretension. I've interviewed a number of authors, and of course, they're armed for bear for a question like this. They can't wait to tell you that life-changing moment, or that when they knew
that would make me wince. No, I can't. No, I'm going to be British. Oh God, no.
I've had everybody from, and a number of the people who I've interviewed have also become public speakers.
Yeah.
So they're ready to go. They're ready and they're armed to speak, and they've got a repertoire of remarks and anecdotes and just thoughts.
They sound dreadful.
Well, I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine I worked with for many years. He's actually becoming very well-received. He's been well-received. He's a writer, a poet, a playwright, and a novelist. And
How annoying.
He told me being a writer in America, being a writer is like trying to be an astronaut. It's just difficult to be a successful writer. To be paid, because he still actually works as a technical writer.
Oh God, exactly, yeah. I mean, in terms, again, back to my earlier point about being a journalist, not making any money. I mean, being a writer, you're not going to make any money at all. I mean, I mean, in terms of, again, become a hedge fund manager, become a whatever it might be, but don't do it for the cash, basically.
He doesn't.
In terms of Dosh, you said your friend has another job, exactly. Snap.
Oh, he has got, and it's actually, a really esteemed professional job. You're writing the technical aspects of websites and internet technology.
Oh, well, good, because that should sell. Because any sort of manual or whatever educational thing should sell.
And there's usually training for people who are going to be using it,
exactly.
And then also there's this documentation on
thousands of students, whatever, might buy it. Oh God, I mean that's jackpot. Sorry, I'll get there eventually.
And that's usually used in corporations when they're training clients on how to use things. So it's got to be very detailed, and he's got to be in meetings with everybody. So it's also helps him in writing because it's minutiae detail and it's recollection of stuff or tracking stuff. So it's easily transferable to his writing skills. The discipline is actually remembering, because the one thing as a fledgling writer know that the more detail, the more accuracy, even though it may seem like trivial, inconsequential stuff to you, other people are just riveted by
oh God. And yes, please. But in terms of threshold, I don't get that. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. For me, the evolution of my life from whatever, campaigner, journalist to writer, just seems kind of natural and directional and what I should have been a writer earlier in my life, but I'm massively lazy. I smoke too much, I drink too much, can't be asked, I stay in bed, But, so I don't think threshold's quite the right word, basically.
Or maybe you crossed that unconsciously at a very young age, and you never even knew it.
Yeah, still not buying it. Okay. No. I'm sorry. I'm coming back to the word bollocks again. No, that sounds like bollocks.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. I'll respect it. I think that's very fine. Now, since we've gone through so many questions and you've interviewed me, I think that covers about 20 questions.
Being a journalist, sorry, my fault.
No, that's fine. I love it. I think it's just that I always tell people, except for you, that I often quite spontaneously will ask a question based on a response.
No,
and you turning the tables on me and interviewing me is even actually more stimulating.
Makes your life easier, if nothing else. There you go.
So I think we've come to the end. And,
no, brilliant. I've loved this, by the way. It's been fantastic. It's been really great to talk to you. So thank you for this.
And the book itself, it's just extraordinary how you took a simple man who was otherwise unremarkable, and the fact that he was confident able to do his life. But the story is, as I always say, everybody's got a story.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that.
And this is a perfect example of it, especially the fine detail in the book compelling. So
and again for listeners, you can buy it, The Diaries of Mr. Lucas, on Amazon.com now.
All right.
There you go. Sorry. I had to get another plug in.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been brilliant.
You have to plug it.
It's been lovely talking to you. I really enjoyed this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Hugo, before I'm going to say thank you. Thanks for listening. And as I say, as the kiddies say, thanks for listening and peace out.